Welcome, everyone, to the PCS Like a Pro show. I'm your host, Megan Harless, as always, and we've got a really great show today. We're going to talk about a topic nobody really likes to discuss until it kind of happens, but we hear about some of those cases every year. And so I've got a friend that had that experience. And so we're going to dive into what that experience and process was like for her. But before we get into that, just to remind everybody, we are in the season of claims. Everybody has finished unpacking from their summer moves and is in the process of filing their claims. Just a reminder, you have 180 days to file your claims with your TSP. You need to file that online on DPS. You have up to 2 years to file with the MCO, the Military Claims Office, as well. I always suggest trying to navigate through and negotiate with your TSP first. If for some reason you guys can't come to an agreement there, you do have the option after 30 days from when you submitted your claim to transfer it to the MCO and let them help navigate that situation for you. So some just reminders there about timelines and what your options are. But we're going to get into today because I want to make sure we have the time to kind of talk about all of the things that we need to talk about with this topic, and that is catastrophic loss. So joining us today is my friend, Jennifer. Welcome to the show, Jennifer.
Hey, everybody.
So can you just take a minute and tell us a little bit about yourself?
Well, like Megan said, my name's Jennifer Deppa. I've been an Army wife for just about 12 years now. My husband's been in for going 13 or so now, 14 years. So we've moved around quite a bit. Currently, he's deployed. We are stationed at Fort Hood, and I have 4 kids between the ages of 5 and 10. I am a freelance writer, so I spend time writing and when my kids are at school. And that's about it. We have a dog and a cat, and recently 2 hamsters joined our house. So
always fun when we get to add in our fur babies, especially when it comes time to PCSing. Always another level of chaos that we enjoy having.
Especially little ones.
Yes. So as I said, I want to dive into this because we're going to talk about catastrophic losses, because every year we always hear about a couple catastrophic losses happening, and that can be anything from mold or another infestation or a truck fire or some other event that occurs. And a catastrophic loss is usually 60% of your line items is usually what it amounts to. Items are damaged beyond the ability to kind of being repaired, sort of deal. So you had a move a few years ago where you had this experience that many of us wish never usually happens. So before we dive into all of the details, can you kind of set the scene for us? Where were you moving to and from? How many PCSs had you done previously? And what was going on in preparing for that PCS?
So we were actually in Eugene, Oregon. So my husband was in grad school at the University of Oregon. So it wasn't a normal military move, and the fact that we weren't at a military post. So the moving company that was contracted came out of Portland, which was 2 hours away. So there was already some issues just getting the logistics worked out because they were coming from farther away. But we had done 5 previous. So I was not new to the PCS process, and all of our moves up until that point had been through the Army. So we did the full, the full PCS with them. They did the packing and the loading and the transporting. Nothing major had happened. So I knew the general. We prepped, we did, we had all of our stuff organized in different rooms, the things that we didn't want packed, the things we did want packed. So again, we didn't think it was anything totally out of the ordinary for a PCS at that point, because we'd been through 5.
So all of that, and then you get the news that your shipment suffers a catastrophic loss. So can you walk us through what that notification was like and what happened?
So they had, back to the packing, it was a very, very unprofessional experience from the beginning. The moving company showed up with 2 guys and said that they were going to pack and load our house entirely in a day, which I knew that was impossible because we have 4 kids and lots of stuff, and it always takes 2 days to pack and a day to load. So I knew that wasn't going to happen. They had packed and loaded some of our stuff on that first day. Their truck died at our house, and they ended up sleeping under the truck in front of our house that first night. And then they were gone the next day, didn't show up for 2 days. showed up again on Thursday, packed until about 3 in the morning, and then loaded our stuff to leave. So we were already aware that it was going to be a bad move, and the truck had already broken down. And then we get a call around our RDD, their delivery date, and they told us that the truck had died in Iowa, had broken down, and so they were going to for sure miss their RDD. So we already knew that. We'd already bought like the basic air mattress. We thought it would be a few days late. And then on Thursday, I think I wrote down on the 19th or 17th of July, we got a call saying that the day prior, so 24 hours before, they didn't even call us right away, the day before the fire had happened. They didn't know the extent of the damage, but they were thinking 75% of the stuff was gone. And the fire, we were at Fort Leavenworth in Kansas, and the fire happened in Nebraska. So it wasn't super far from us, I guess. But we got the call from the moving company. They were not mean about it. They just were not necessarily nice. Told us, yeah, the fire happened the day before, that they were going to be at the truck fire at the facility where the stuff was being held by the following Monday. So Friday, I called our local, the investigators Megan knows the better term. I'm forgetting the term at the point. The QA people at Fort Leavenworth, and he tells me that on Monday he's going to be out there. They're going to help us. And then they didn't show up. Nobody was there Monday. So my husband actually went out there to try to see what was salvaged, because we found out that whatever was not just completely burned was shoveled into an open air dump truck and was being stored at like a tow yard, but out in the air. And it was obviously late summer, which is there's storms and stuff in Kansas, Nebraska. So our stuff was just sitting out in the open, and anything that wasn't already burned that could maybe be salvaged we were worried was going to be unsalvageable at that point if it sat out for however many days. So my husband went out there to try to get that, and then to see what we could save. And I'll let you go on from there. I don't know if I'm getting past you, Megan.
No, I love hearing your story, because I feel like I learned something new from it each time. And I think it's important that we kind of share this experience of what happened. So in all this process of, getting notified and kind of navigating what happens next, what was the support like that you experienced from both the military side of the house and then also from your TSP?
TSP had never really felt supported. We had to fight them tooth and nail to even get basic and convenient stuff. So like we had 4 kids, and it was a 2-story house with a full basement. So 3 floors of stuff. I had a 2-year-old, just a 2-year-old, and then some older kids. So even getting like a $10 baby gate, they fought me on just everything. At one point, it was a husband and wife who owned the company. At one point, the wife literally said to me on the phone, "This is the worst thing that we could have had happen to us." And I remember thinking, you get to go home to your stuff in your bed, and I'm sleeping on an air mattress with my 4 children who are crying every day that their stuff is gone. So definitely not supported by the TSP. Again, they didn't come. It took them, I think, a week and a half to get out to where the fire was to even investigate it themselves. On the military side of things, I'll look at it 2 ways. The military community was amazing. The friends, the people, a huge outflowing of support from people we had never met, just bringing us things, asking us what we needed, clothes, towels, toys. Like people gave us bed frames. I mean, everything we could imagine. People were so gracious. On the military side, the military claims office was very unhelpful. I felt like we couldn't get through to somebody who knew how to handle a catastrophic loss. Nobody could tell us the next step, who to talk to, what to expect, if we were entitled to anything different, if we had to wait for the one claim, the one payout, because here we were knowing up front, we needed to bare minimum buy beds and a couch because I couldn't sit on another folding camping chair any longer. So we knew it was going to be thousands and thousands and thousands of dollars up front. So but nobody could tell us where to go from there. But Fort Leavenworth, the leadership at Fort Leavenworth was very helpful, and they did try to help work with us. So yes and no, some support, but a lot of not support.
Yeah. And I think with the TSP, I think any catastrophic loss is probably one of the worst things that could happen to them. And again, our community, I feel like we are really good at rallying around each other and being able to take care of each other and take care of our own. And, with your experience, how just the community here at Leavenworth, really stepped in to help, try to meet your needs and try to help you in the interim as you navigated all of this. We find that a lot within our community, that when either catastrophic losses happen or some other major event happens, that we are really good at taking care of our own, and we are really good at stepping in to kind of help fill the gap or meet the need while we have to wait through whatever bureaucratic process is there that we have to go through. And so it's just kind of comforting to kind of hear that, just how our community, just kind of stepped in and it was there to kind of help you with all of that. So the claim piece of things, walk us through what this was like what was required of you. What did you have to do in order to file your claim? Was everything on DPS? Did you get to do an Excel spreadsheet? Just how did that whole claims process kind of go?
So I remember being so anxious about the claims process and that I was going to have to do it through the system. And I remember previous moves just being kicked out. Just everybody goes through that. Everybody knows that the system is not always works the best. But thankfully, we worked with the TSP and they allowed us to submit an Excel spreadsheet. So they gave us the list. They obviously wanted if we could come up with the line item on the inventory, they needed that, the description of the item, what we paid for it, if we could get an idea what it was, if we could have find a link to what it was now, if we could find a comparable thing or the exact same thing, if it was possible. So we had the spreadsheet. But I mean, again, it was hundreds and hundreds and hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of items long. And just the process of when you don't have anything in front of you, usually you're making your claim, usually some things go missing, but usually I'm looking at my broken dishes or my cracked table or the couch with the missing leg or whatever it is, you looking at it and you make your claim. But we had to think through everything in our house, and we had to wait until we got our stuff first to even know what to claim. So the fire happened in July. We started getting stuff back. Everything that wasn't burned that could be salvaged had to go through ServPro, and then ServPro contracted basically a textile company. So stuffed animals and clothes and handbags and sheets, everything had to be washed through them. So stuff started trickling in late September or so. But we didn't get everything until probably October or November to start our claim process, to know what we got back so that we could then file. So I remember just thinking in my head, I would open kitchen cabinets and I'd open drawers in my head in my old house. I'd have to walk through in my mind and kind of think where we had things and try to think what we didn't have. And I would surf my shopping history on Amazon and different websites that I knew I shopped at more to try to look through what we had not gotten back. So it was a really long, hard process to try to even make that claim. And I know we missed things, obviously, because it's just impossible to claim everything when you don't have it in front of you.
Yeah, no, it's definitely that hard process of trying to remember what did you have, what was in there, which is one of the things, if you've been in my group for a while, for those watching, I'm a big fan of having your own home inventory and going through room by room and being able to put to paper what it is you have for in the event that you have these catastrophic losses, and not just when you're moving, but should you have a house fire or a tornado or something come through, you've got this document you can easily send in for insurance purposes. So, I mean, did you have a private personal property policy, insurance policy that you were able to utilize and file whatever was left against that?
We did. So at the time we had USAA, and I remember earlier on, just when the moving company, the TSP, was being really, really difficult to deal with. And so we actually even thought about just filing immediately through USAA because we had this renter's insurance, and we thought that was going to be a good option. We found out that you actually cannot file through your private insurance until you have finalized your claim with the TSP. So we had kind of started to claim with them. It was put on pause for several months. So once our claim was finalized, once we submitted our Excel spreadsheet, and I mean, obviously, I know this is talked about in the group, there's a max that TSPs are liable for, and it's $6 a pound up to $75,000. And we had enough weight that we got up to $75,000, but we claimed double that at least. So they looked at our spreadsheet. They basically saw that they were going to be maxed out. And so they didn't even assign value to things. They just said, okay, here's what they took out, the money that they paid ServPro. And then they paid us the rest by a check. And so then I had to send all of that documentation plus our spreadsheet over to USAA for them to then go through which is a whole other process because your private insurance, what's the word? I can't even think of the word I'm trying to say now. They take like a decreased value basically. So you might have paid $2,000. It's worth $1,000 now. So they'll give you $1,000, and then when you submit, if you buy it again for $2,000 and you submit your receipt, they'll give you that second $1,000 back. So it's a multi-step process with your private insurance. So after we finalized our claim with our TSP, we sent everything over to USAA, and that took another several months. So we actually, like the fire was July. We didn't get our final checks until like March. Honestly, late February, March is when we were getting our final checks from USAA.
And then you were in the process of preparing for your next PCS because here at Leavenworth, I know you were here for the schoolhouse, which you're only here for 11 months. And then you're preparing for your next PCS.
Well, thankfully, my husband did SAM, so we got to stay at Leavenworth for 2 years. So I remember thinking very, very thankfully that we had got to stay one more year and not have to immediately start packing as we were just finalizing our previous claim. But
yeah, that definitely helps some. So having a catastrophic loss, we know can be a traumatizing experience, especially when we have children involved. So can you explain some about the experience and how it impacted your family unit as a whole?
So at the time, my kids were between 2 and 7. So they were not old, not really, really young, like not babies. Well, one of them was kind of a baby, but so we told them about the fire, obviously. It was just a very emotional time. Every time the doorbell would ring, some of our kids would ask if our stuff was at the door finally. At bedtime, obviously we let them pack. I mean, all parents, they bring a few things with them in the PCS, but most of their stuffed animals and blankets and toys, everything were all packed up. And so we'd be laying in bed and doing our good night routine, and they would get really emotional and ask if, whatever toy or stuffed animal or something from Nana or Gigi or whoever made it. And we just couldn't answer those questions. So we spent lots of time talking about, when things are out of our control, they're just things, we can replace things, but we're safe. Everything that, we love is safe, are irreplaceable things. But it was really traumatizing. Therapy was involved because it was like they couldn't process the idea. And then when we did start preparing for our next move, it was very emotional again. The thought they couldn't get past the thought that their things wouldn't make it. So even though we did a full ditty the second time, the next move, just because I wasn't ready to go through the Army again, through the military. But you never know. Like we took extra precautions and we did a ton of research with the moving companies that we hired to transport our stuff. But those things happen. Those fires happen. You can't escape that. Those accidents happen, natural disasters. But it took lots of emotional prep for our children, for them to process through it, and then to get ready again for another move, because they just they didn't understand. And we still kind of, in our family, that fire is still kind of like there's a before and after, like before the fire and the after fire, because it was a life-changing event in our family life. So
no, definitely. So having gone through this experience, are there any lessons learned that you would want to pass on to other spouses, or anything that you would now do differently as like a just in case type of thing?
So like you mentioned the inventory, I could literally hear your voice in my head when we started this about the inventory. And I remember thinking, knowing that was a good idea and knowing I should have done it and I had not done it. So having an inventory is just really helpful. I mean, even if it's without a catastrophic, it just makes it easy to make your claim. But my biggest piece of advice, and I've talked to several other families that have gone through this, is to advocate for yourself. Because I think at the beginning, we kind of sat back thinking, oh, the military is going to take care of us. We have these claims offices and these QA, all these people. And not that they're out to get you by any means, but they're busy and there's a lot going on. So the best thing is to advocate for yourself. And so I spent hours and hours a day for the first few weeks. I mean, ultimately, I probably spent hundreds and hundreds of hours making our claim, talking to people, calling the MCO, calling the TSP, calling people at Leavenworth, just trying to find out what I need to do next. Because I wanted to make sure I spent time talking with you, Megan, at the time too. Making sure that I was checking all my boxes so that I wasn't forgetting anything, and that we weren't going to come find out a few months later we didn't do something. And so that was going to hold up the process, because we were lucky in that we were not very young. We were not old. We were young enough that we had enough savings. So we had very supportive family and friends. But if we had been in a situation where we didn't have savings, we didn't have friends, we'd have to go get the loans. And so just being able to advocate for yourself, knowing what you need, finding out who to talk to about it, and then not being afraid to ask for it. And it's okay to ask for help. I think, as so many people are saying, so many people just won't accept help, won't ask for it. And then when it's offered, don't take it. And when people started saying, how can we help? Like, what can we do? My first instinct was like, no, we can handle it. But we started saying yes. And so advocating for yourself and then accepting help. And people want to help you. So when people say, I have some bedding, I have these toys, I have puzzles, I have a couch I'm not using, like, say yes to those things because people want to help you. So that was it was hard at first, but yes, that was my big piece of advice.
Yeah, no, definitely. And if you see, I dropped into the comments the link to our Google Drive. We have a bunch of free resources on there, including a home inventory template. So you guys can go on there and start going room by room. It can be as in-depth or as in detail as you want it to be, or just a very skim the top of whatever you want it to be. I know some people will go through and they make the whole list of their book collection by title, by author, publishing date, all of that. You could simply just put, we own 432 books. Like, it doesn't have to be whatever your comfort level is. That template gives you the ability to put in as much detail or not as much detail as whatever you want. But having that, as Jennifer says, will go through and help make that process easier. The last two questions I have, I like asking every military spouse that I have on the show. So the first one is, do you have a favorite duty station and what?
Did you say and why? Was it the last part of that question? It kind of froze. Yeah. So people think I'm crazy. Honestly, our favorite duty station was probably Fort Riley. I know it's a higher op tempo. It's kind of in the middle of nowhere. We loved it. We had a fantastic community there. I loved our friends. I still have a text group with 4 of my really close friends from Fort Riley. We just loved it. I love Manhattan, Kansas. I think it's a really underrated town. But that kind of goes along with the previous advice. Like, if I had advice for that, don't make a judgment about a place before you've been there. When we got Fort Riley, people were like, oh, Fort Riley. And we loved it. And because we made the best of it. We went out and found things. We love to hike. There's cool things to do there and the restaurants. So we loved Fort Riley.
Which, ironically, Fort Riley was our very first duty station, and it was probably my least favorite that we have been at.
There are those. I know some people hate it.
Yeah. So, I mean, I wouldn't say I would hate it. It's better than some other locations that we could possibly be sent to, but it's not high on the list of me eagerly wanting to run back to.
I like the Midwest too, so.
Yeah, I really like Leavenworth. That'd probably be high on my list just because we have Kansas City so close, and
yeah,
you don't feel like you're missing a lot of anything because the city is so close to the installation. The last question I want to end on today is, do you have a piece of advice that you would want to pass on to other spouses? And it doesn't have to be PCS related, just a piece of advice you want to pass on to others.
I think my favorite piece of advice that I've gotten from more senior spouses is to know your season of life and to know what you can do and can't do and to be okay with that. So sometimes you're at a time where you can volunteer and you can be involved and you can do all the things, and other times you can't. So my favorite piece of advice was just to know your season and then to be okay with where you're at.
No, that's definitely some good advice to end on. And every installation, every time you PCS, it's almost like a new season for you to navigate through. So, Jennifer, thank you so much for being with us today and being able to share the experience of your family's catastrophic loss.
I'm happy to do it.
And everybody else watching, thank you for joining us today as well. Hopefully you've learned something, taken something away to help you on your next PCS. Make sure to join us next week, same time, same place, for another show. And if you're going through a PCS and you've got questions, please don't hesitate to reach out. We're always happy to help as much as we can. And until next week, y'all take care of each other.